Welcome, everybody, to a new segment that I'm trying. This is kind of a quarterly wrap up. Unfortunately, I already used the quarter notes moniker for my video, so I can't even use that. I think this is just going to be our favorites, our disappointments, some of the things that we just want to talk about of the first quarter of the year, kind of as a little bit of a review. And to help me out with this, I've got three of my favorite people across YouTube and beyond. So let's start with Travis first. Travis, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Travis. I write album reviews for ultimateguitar.com. I also dabble in YouTube from time to time, just under my name, Travis Lausch. It's a mix of different things, from music discussion to even gaming a little bit, but and cover songs from time to time. I don't use the channel as much as I probably should, but it's there to check out. I'm also on Twitter under Lausho1. We'll probably have you put that in the description below. And yeah.
Perfect.
That's me.
Thanks for coming on, Travis. Let's go over to Brent.
Hey guys, I run the Similitude of Prog webpage and Facebook page. I also have a Friday night radio show that I am pretty proud of, and getting a lot of traction doing that, and that pretty much keeps me busy. And the normal life stuff, but
yeah, absolutely. And last but certainly not least, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm Nathan from Nathan on Shuffle is my YouTube channel that I do all kinds of prog content. I cover all kinds of new albums. I do kind of a weekly prog news kind of show. And I do a lot of shows with my wife where I'm introducing her to the new prog music as well. So just kind of a fun time with all kinds of different music, mostly prog and related style music. So a lot of fun over there.
Excellent. Yeah. And if you haven't already, check out all three of these magnificent people's endeavors. I've left all those links down below, so go and check those out. But without further ado, we're going to dive into what we thought was the best of the first 3 months of 2022. And I have a very sophisticated way of figuring this all out. I have a D4. There's 4 of us, so we're going to find out who is going to talk about their favorite, or what in their mind the best album of the year, or not the year, the first quarter. And I rolled a 2, so that means that Travis, you're up first, my man. You're in the hot seat. What was the best of 2022 so far?
I think so far for me, the best of 22 is from an artist that, like, for me is just reliable. I don't think anything he ever puts out can be truly bad. And that's Arjen Lucassen with his new album From Star One. Absolutely brilliant record, Revel in Time. Just absolutely classic Arjen Lucassen through and through. Like, there's nothing there's no moment on this album where I'm listening to it and I just don't have the urge to just grin and bang my head along with it. I think if I had to pick a particular song off of it that just really blew me away, it was the opening song, Fate of Man. For those who are unaware of Star One, it is a progressive metal project in which Arjen Lucassen does concept albums with each song based on the plot of a different science fiction film. On the first album, it was very space-oriented films. The second one was dystopian franchises. And on the new album, he's doing time travel as his theme for the movies. And this one is based on a personal favorite action film of mine, The Terminator. And it is sung by the absolutely amazing Brittany Slays from the band Unleash the Archers, a fellow Canadian. And it's just such a good song. And yeah, it's the opening track. So if you're out there watching this and you want to hear just a really good prog metal release from 2022, that opening track will blow your mind, and then it'll make you want to listen to the rest of it. And you should, because it is chef's kiss. It is brilliant.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that one. The few tracks that I loved. I mean, I love Revel in Time, the title track. Oh, what was the one from Back to the Future? Oh, what was the title from that one? There were like two or three back to back that I really liked, like the Bill and Ted's song. That final one though, the final track that was based off of Inception, or not Inception, it's the other one.
Interstellar.
Thank you, Interstellar.
Lost Children of the Universe. I actually prefer the music video version because it has because like on the album I think they used Roy Khan as the sole vocalist, and that, or I forget which way it goes. I'm gonna actually have to check that again, but one of the versions has Roy Khan doing all the regular male lead vocal, and then there's another version with former Black Sabbath singer Tony Martin. And then the music video version actually kind of mixes the two together. So you have like half the vocals being Roy Khan from Camelot and Conception, and then the other half being Tony Martin. So yeah, I thought they should have done that on the album proper, but they split the two versions so that like one version is on the proper record, the other one's on like the bonus edition. I was also a big fan of the track Prescient, which featured Ross Jennings from Haken, who also another personal favorite of mine.
Yeah, he's only on for like a couple choruses, unlike other singers who sing the whole song. But anything from Ross, I'm gonna be very excited about.
Same.
Yeah. What did you guys think about Revel in Time? Nathan, I see that it's behind you, so hopefully you thought it was good enough to own.
Yeah, I just got the vinyl just yesterday, along with their first two records as well on vinyl. So
perfect,
pretty
timing.
cool. Yeah, yeah, I love it too. I just thought it was just such a blast, just so much fun to listen to, and I'm a big science fiction geek as well, so that perfectly lined up with my tastes. And as you mentioned, Prescient is probably my favorite track from it, with Michael Mills and Ross Jennings on vocals, just really proggy and really cool. And I like all the different vocal interplay and all that stuff that they do in it. So just really fun. And there's just a lot of fun, like the track, I forget what it's called, Today is Yesterday or something like that.
Yeah.
From Groundhog Day, I think is the movie.
Yeah.
I thought that was just super fun song too, and just really cool all the way around.
Did you get a chance to hear it, Brent?
I'm not familiar with it other than hearing about it, but the way you guys talk about it, I should definitely be checking it out.
Yeah, if you love anything from like Arion or The Gentle Storm or anything that Arjun has done in the past, it's right
I'm
up
not that familiar with him. Where would be a good place to start? Like, other than hearing the odd little bit here and there.
You've got some homework. No,
shit.
So I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but my introduction to Arjun's music was the Arion album 0101001. And I think I got that. Like I remember going into the record store and asking for that, and they're like
01011001.
Yeah. And like it was, I love that album. But the other one that I think everybody says is Arion's, like the two from Arion, is Into the Electric Castle and The Human Equation. And I think you would really, really enjoy both of those works.
I think the fact that those are the only two releases that have seen full live performances from Arion says something about the longevity and how well received The Human Equation and Into the Electric Castle have been. So like he hasn't done a full performance of any other record yet. So
I'm still waiting for The Theory of Everything. Like it'll I hope it'll come. I love that record. Okay, well, speaking of Brent, why don't you go next for one of your favorite albums from this year? Unless let's do it this way. Let's go one at a time.
I brought props.
Ooh, all right.
This, of course, is Marillion's brand new album, which I see is hanging behind you there, Nathan.
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. I'm actually not like the biggest Marillion fan up to this point. Like it's kind of a newer band I'm trying to get into right now. But yeah, this was one of the best things I've heard from them so far. I thought it was excellent.
After what we've been going through in the world, you can really hear that bleed into that album. And I think they do it and it's not in your face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can interpret it as you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, because of this album, I've actually gone back and I'm kind of working on a worst to best for Marillion. So if you want an entry point for that, I've
Sure.
got you covered.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also giving me a really good like recontextualization of the album, because when I first heard it, I was kind of lukewarm with the album. And I've been lukewarm for their past 2 releases. But the more I'm listening to it, it is one that kind of begs your time for it to really blossom out, to really like see all the nooks and crannies of it. Yeah.
And that was a big problem with Fear. I know you're not a big promoter of that, but that
every
to me
year
is a top 5 album of theirs for me.
Yeah. And I know people love that album, and every year I go back to that album just to see if there's something that I'm missing, and I'm still waiting for it to connect. You know, I love their longer stretches of music, but I don't know, there's something about the Fear that I'm not quite getting. Whereas at least with An Hour Before It's Dark, I'm really getting into it. I'm really enjoying the more subtle moments.
Positive side.
just a smidge. Yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, like for me, Marillion, I never really gave much of a chance to the Hogarth era. But you know, of course, like you have your classics from that era, like Brave and Marbles. But I think this is the first Hogarth era Marillion album where I put it on blank of expectations. Just, you know what, I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to see what it's all about. And I found myself really enjoying my time with it. There's some really good musical passages on there. Absolutely brilliant songwriting.
Yeah. What is it? The one that pays tribute to Leonard Cohen.
Sierra Leone, not at
no, it's the Crow and not the Crow. I know it's like it's got a bird in it.
Yeah.
You got to help me out.
Bad.
It's one of the shorter tracks.
The Crow and the Nightingale.
Crow and the Nightingale. That is just brilliant.
I didn't know that song was a tribute to Cohen.
Yeah.
Well, now I do.
Hogarth tributes Cohen as being like one of his main inspirations.
Yeah,
and
his biggest almost.
And I think it was on Sounds That Can't Be Made where he actually makes reference directly to him, where the song Montreal. Yeah, he was saying, I'm over here and I'm seeing Leonard Cohen over in the UK, and it's perfect symmetry.
Okay, correction. Sounds That Can't Be Made was actually another album of the Hogarth era I really enjoyed too. So maybe I have to revisit the Hogarth era.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
That song Gaza is just
it's so heavy.
Every time I listen to it. Yeah. Perfect. Nathan, what's an album that you really have been enjoying this year?
Probably my favorite so far this year, it just came out pretty recent, is the new Pattern Seeking Animals album, Only Passing Through. Really liking that. Yeah, exactly. I really love this group. They're made up of like members from Spock's Beard, kind of in the past and present, you know, Ted Leonard on vocals, and Jimmy Keegan, and Dave Maros, of course, on bass, with John Baghold, I think. I never know how to pronounce his last name, but yeah,
I think that's how you do it.
Was a writer for Spock's Beard, kind of the more recent era post Neil Morse, and he's just an excellent writer. And I just think the band keeps getting better and better, more kind of coming into their own identity rather than just being like a kind of offshoot of Spock's Beard. They're really becoming their own band. And I just like how they incorporate different sounds and styles, but keep like really good kind of melodic pop hooks. Essentially, like the songs are catchy and hook driven, but also have a lot of, you know, different experimentation in the instruments, and they'll go into different like things that sound like almost movie like soundscapes and things, and you know, like horns and violin and all these different kinds of things. But it just is really a fun listen. Just every track is kind of its own thing, but they all fit together in a great way. I thought the last album, Prehensile Tales, was also great. So kind of also those are the two that really stand up to me as their best work so far. So
yeah,
really
and Yeah, Nathan, I loved what you said on your review of the album, where it fulfills a lot of the promises of their first two albums. And
Yeah.
I think that was a perfect summarization of it. I have it on some of my surprises of the year because,
Yeah.
like, I've been more than lukewarm. I've been pretty favorable to Pattern Seeking Animals. I really liked their Prehensile Tales record,
Yeah.
which actually Brent was the one that got me into that because I didn't realize they
it's
were
really strong. That one.
yeah, I didn't realize it was a thing until Brent started talking about it. I'm like, I got to check these guys out. And yeah, I think it's their most mature and their strongest work to date. And I'm really hoping for a fourth album.
Yeah. Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah. I
Anybody
think
know where anybody, here's a bit of trivia. Do you know where they got the name Pattern Seeking Animals?
Oh, I do. Oh, isn't it? Oh boy, putting me on the spot. I want to say it was like a scientific term that helped distinguish humanity from the rest of the animal, like the animal kingdom, right? Am I touching on the
That's not
same?
what I heard, but
Oh,
that's
shoot. Okay.
that's good though. No, there's off of Spock's Beard's Noise Vault album.
Yeah.
On the B side, there's a song called Bulletproof on the extra bonus disc. And that's one of the lyrics where Pattern Seeking Animals doing something.
Okay.
I just thought that was a real neat.
Yeah, definitely. That's
Well,
really cool.
This is one of the bands I'm actually not familiar with in terms of like, I've heard the name, but I've never really listened to their music. So you guys have given me some recommendations to check out here now.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're a little bit more, oh boy, do I even want to say they're more accessible than Spock's Beard? Because
I would say so.
yeah, like the one guy, I don't have the names, the lead keyboardist and productionist, kind of got to start in like soundtracks and things along those lines, if my memory serves. Like he's much more behind the scenes, and so that cinematic approach is felt throughout the run times with a little bit more focus of creating catchy, accessible prog.
Yeah, he's a multi-instrumentalist too, by the way. Plays a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I suck at guitar and bass.
I'm really good at air bass.
Yeah.
And air drums too.
Yeah, I'm great at singing in the shower.
I'm not.
Oh boy. So I guess it's my turn. Man, there were a lot of really good releases, and I think the one that really stands out for me is the War of the Worlds Part 2 from Michael Romeo or Romero. I haven't heard how he pronounces Romeo. Okay, perfect. Because I know like certain people pronounce it Romero in terms of like how they spell it.
I think they're trying to say more like Romeo to make it sound all like fancy.
Right. So Michael Romeo. The first album, War of the Worlds Part 1, was good. You know, it was your standard Michael Romeo. He comes from Symphony X, so kind of a contemporary along the same lines of like Dream Theater and a lot of those bands. Very symphonic, power metal. Have some really staple albums if you guys haven't heard them yet. And this was his side project, his own little thing. And the second introduction it made me love Symphony X's music more, where I've been kind of deep diving into their back catalog and re-listening to a lot of the albums that I love. It's meaty. All of the songs are so memorable. And even though it is extremely guitar led, at no point does it feel repetitive or redundant. Everything sounds very fresh. It's very cinematic as well. It kind of reminds me of and this is something I mentioned in my review, it reminds me of the score from Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. Like it has that big sound and this big, fully fleshed out world. So yeah, if you haven't checked out the album yet and you're a fan of this kind of power symphonic prog metal, it's going to be a good time. So
excellent.
Yeah. Have you guys heard this? I feel like I'm the only one that's
I've
heard this.
heard the two
I've heard the
singles.
singles.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I think someone else just said the exact same thing at the same time as me.
Yes, it was in
Yeah.
stereo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the album is like, it's just a taste. Like those singles are just a taste. My
Yeah.
favorite parts of this album are the deeper cuts, like some of the instrumental tracks on here. Very good. It keeps me coming back for more.
I
So.
mean, as a proponent of shred guitar myself, I trust Michael Romeo to blow my mind.
Mhm.
So this is one of those albums that's already kind of on my to-do list,
Yeah.
or to-listen list.
Yeah. For Nathan, this reminds me of a lot of the moments from The Source, I think from Arion.
Okay.
Like Run Apocalypse Run. I keep hearing a lot of that inflection in this album. So
Awesome.
just
Yeah, I've
as a
heard
little taste.
I did listen to it once through, but I need to hear it more to really grasp onto it. But yeah,
Right.
I thought it was really cool. And the parts that stuck out to me, like what you were saying, were kind of those instrumental, like
Mhm.
interludes with all the orchestration and stuff. I thought that was all really, really cool and built kind of the atmosphere of the album really well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, really cool.
So those are some of our favorites. Does anybody have any other favorites from this year so far? I've got about 3 more, depending on how long we want to spend our time on the best. Why don't we start? Let's go back. Let's start from the end and go back. So let's start with Nathan, if you have any other ones.
Okay, well, some of the other ones behind me are kind of on my list. Of the new Flower Kings, I thought was really great by Royal Decree. A
Mhm.
really cool kind of, in that modern vein of their recent stretch of 3 albums, but also with little touches of kind of that classic Flower King sound. I love the Troika album, of course, Neil Morse, DiVirgilio, and Ross Jennings.
Yeah.
Just really great. Not really very proggy, but more of a singer-songwriter with like great 3-part harmonies. I just thought that was a really beautiful record. We kind of talked about it together back on our review of it, so that was cool. And yeah, just the Big Train as well, Welcome to the Planet, which came out earlier in January. I thought was a great album and a really good send off for David Lungden as well. Just really great tracks and really beautiful. So those were the ones that stood out to me so far.
Beautiful. Brent, any other ones that stood out for you today?
Everything that Nathan pretty much mentioned, plus Toll's new album.
Oh yes, the Zealot Gene.
Completely blew me away.
Great.
At how good it is.
Mhm.
I was just taken right back to Heavy Horses and that time period. And yeah.
Yeah, I was reminded of the better parts from like Crest of a Knave and Beast and Broadsword, like the better parts of those albums.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say, like, because that would have been my choice for like maybe a second favorite, and that it kind of reminded me a lot of like their 80s material, like as you mentioned, Broadsword, Crest of a Knave, a little bit that wannabe Ian Anderson solo album A, which has I mean, I know there's a lot of people who are like cringing at this now, but I actually adore that album. So
it's a good album.
So I mean, I did enjoy the Zealot Gene. I thought there was some really good moments on that, especially the first half of the record.
Absolutely. Travis, any other ones that stood out for you this year?
Other than the ones I just mentioned, and again, the new Marillion. Not yet. I'm working on it.
No worries. The other 3 that I had, Rollo Tomasi put out a brilliant album this year, Where Myths Become Legends. It really knocked me out. Like, I loved their last album, and this one just supersedes all the expectations for that one. The new, and I know this one came out a little too recently to be lumped in with the first quarter, so I'll talk about it a little bit more in the second quarter, but the new Animals as Leaders album of Parisia. Travis, I think you'll love this record. It is just like, no.
We'll get to that.
Okay. Oh man, I've been listening to this record almost on repeat for a full week and a half, and just, I love it. I love the synth sounds that are on it. Where I find Animals as Leaders can get a little bit repetitive, a little bit redundant. I found this one, they kept finding new ways to make things sound really fresh and really new. And finally, the one that really knocked me out was the new Black Road New Country album, Ants From Up There. Like, even though this was one of the first records to come out of the year, it set such a high bar for everything kind of going forward in terms of like kind of reevaluating what progressive rock means in 2022, like in this new millennia, and taking a more modern and contemporary approach to it. I was getting flavors of like Arcade Fire, and even at times like the Decemberances, but just a fantastic, more indie side of the jazz progressive rock. So those are my other ones for this year that I have not stopped listening to. So yeah, let's go on to some of the disappointments, and I'll roll to see who's going to start the ball rolling for a segment that's fun, but I'm not a big fan of. And that time we're going to number 4. That's Nathan. Okay. So Nathan, why don't we start with you? What was an album that kind of disappointed you this year?
Okay. This is kind of hard for me. I don't have many to choose from because I tend to
disappointments rather than the worst.
No, yeah, because I tend to like most of the bands I check out, and if I don't like it, I don't really spend much time with it. But probably if I had, which you guys all just mentioned is one you guys liked, but I would have probably said the Jethro Tull album, The Zealot Gene, as a slight disappointment. I liked pieces of it. I liked a lot of the more like acoustic kind of pieces that were on it, but overall it just wasn't quite my favorite based on kind of their classic period. I was hoping it would be a little bit better, so a little bit disappointed, but it still wasn't bad. And I thought it, kind of sits in kind of the middle of their discography for me. I did kind of a ranking and it was right kind of smack in the middle there. So not too bad, but just wasn't my favorite of the year so far. Yeah, personally,
I agree. As much as I enjoyed it, I think from a legacy band such as Jethro Tull, it's especially since this is their first one since I think the Christmas album in 2001 as like an official. I liked a lot of Ian Anderson's solo stuff, like the Homo Erectus album, a little bit more. But yeah, I mean it's great, it's good, not great in my mind.
I find it interesting that you mentioned that you enjoyed more of the acoustic pieces, because this is actually the first Jethro Tull album, I think, ever, but the first one like since their early period without lead guitarist Martin Barr. And I mean, he was, or this lineup was the one that did the Thick as a Brick Part 2 and Homo Erectus.
I thought it was Homo Erectus.
No,
Eradicus.
Homo Eradicus.
I'm going to get blasted in the comments.
It's okay. But yeah, it's the same lineup that did those albums, but that's under the Ian Anderson name, and then now you're calling it Jethro Tull, but there's no Martin Barr. So I can understand why some fans might be a little put off by that.
I could see that. Absolutely.
Can I just let me step in for a minute?
Absolutely, Brett. Please.
Have you guys heard the new Pink Floyd song?
I haven't.
Yes. And you just reminded me of taking the name of a band that only got original members, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was interesting. I really liked the guitar solo because, I mean, it's David Gilmour. It's
like,
yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't heard it yet. I know I'm a bad prog fan. At least my opinion in terms of like, should they have done it or whatever? Absolutely. I mean, it's the same lineup that's on A Momentary Lapse of Reason, so it's still following the same lineup. So after I'm absolutely going to check it out. Travis, go for it.
I'm guessing that like the majority of us in the room are in our like early to mid 30s.
Yeah.
Brett's not, but it's okay.
You're one of us anyway.
I've heard a lot of people saying like, oh, without Roger Waters, it isn't Pink Floyd, but he hasn't been a member longer than most of us in this room have been alive. I mean,
it's true.
He hasn't been in the band since '85. I think we can tolerate Pink Floyd without Roger Waters at this point.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I mean, it is one of those things where they might have a case if Pink Floyd didn't go off to write at least one other masterpiece. Like if Division Bells wasn't a thing, then I'd be like, oh, maybe they have something to stand on. But because Division Bells is a masterpiece that it is, I'm like, well, it's just a different iteration of the band.
And what's wrong with a momentary lapse of reason?
Nothing. I will say the
Production is horrible.
well, that's why I really like the remastering of A Delicate Sound of Thunder that came out, I think last year or the year before. That made me fall in love with the album because of how it was presented live. So yeah. So we're skirting around the actual topic, but I love the little sidebar. Brent, because you were the one that started it, what was a disappointment from this year?
I've been told by a lot of people, friends, etc., to get into Ghost.
Thank you.
I've tried.
I've
numerous
got that
times,
on my
and
yep.
I can't do it.
That's fair.
It's too, pardon the word, goddamn gimmicky.
Mm-hmm.
Be one thing. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, I will take that as a jumping off point because it Imperia was an album that I have on my disappointments. I know a lot of people are loving this album and they're loving this iteration of the band.
And I get it, like their music is very appealing, but what are you guys trying to be and try to do?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I still love Meliora, and Prequel it took a little bit of time for me to warm up to, and I enjoyed. I still love Meliora, but yeah, Imperia, I'm sorry, it's not for me. It's on my disappointments for sure. But Travis, I feel, are you a defender of this album?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
I think Kaiserion was just an absolutely brilliant piece of arena rock. Like, if you're just going, like, I just go into Ghost for the music. I don't really care about the costumes or the personas or whatever. Knowing that Frederick Ackerson from Opeth was the guitar player on this record, I'm going into it kind of expecting a little bit of his flavor in the guitar playing, and the riffs are just brilliant. And I mean, you were saying you don't really know what they're trying to be. They actually answered that in a recent interview, like where they take a lot of inspiration from bands like Rammstein, where, you know, they have like the massive stage persona, and it doesn't really like mean anything. It's just they want to put on a good show for the audience. And so they take a lot of inspiration from that. And I think like musically, they're trying to be sort of like if Black Sabbath and ABBA had some bastard demon child.
I mean, you're pretty close on the mark. I remember when Ghost was first being a thing, somebody was saying Ghost's artwork is very much like a haunted mansion, and their music is the Scooby-Doo gang trying to solve the mystery in that mansion.
Yeah,
that's pretty yeah, that's accurate. I think, and I love how people are saying like this is very arena rock, because I feel like my expectation going in was the same as all the Prog fans' expectations were for Asia when they first dropped their first record, where, you know, you've got Steve Howe, you've got John Wetton, you've got like all these big Prog legends coming together to make an album, and you're like, oh, it's going to be great. You see the front cover, you're like, Roger Dean is on there, it's going to be great. And then it's just a bunch of arena rock stuff, and you're like, what on earth is this? So
it can't all be UK.
Yeah, so yeah, I feel like that's kind of the same issue. What I will say though, if anybody gets a chance to see them live, that's really where they shine. Because yeah, my dad and I got to see them live, and they put on a phenomenal show. So, but yeah, Imperial was still a disappointment for me. Didn't like it. All right, Travis, what was a disappointment for you?
I've got a couple of them.
Okay.
I'm going to start with like the one that really didn't do anything for me, and that was the new album by Meshuggah, Immutable. I really feel like, there was a time when Meshuggah was the cutting edge metal band, and every album of theirs, they would surprise you with some new element to their music that they never really brought to the table before. And I think the last time they really did that was in 2008 with Obzen. And even then, like, that album was kind of like a little bit of a, all right, we're done conceptualizing. We're just going to come out with like 8 really solid pieces of metal songwriting. And since then, they haven't progressed. They haven't evolved in any significant way. And every album's just since Obzen has just kind of been more of the same.
Yeah,
And
I agree. Like, after you had mentioned that they had put out this album and how you weren't a big fan of it, I listened to it, and the first 2 tracks, I'm like, well, this is good. I don't know what he's talking about. These are some pretty strong tracks, but like the album's like an hour and change, and that's just a really massive ask when presented with this type of music. And I mean, I love Obzen. It's my favorite album of theirs. But yeah, mimicking what you were saying, I just feel like they're kind of spinning their wheels. Like the last album they put out, the delicate,
the Violent Sleep of Reason.
That's it. I wanted to say it was the Delicate Sleep of Reason, but the Violent Sleep of Reason. A little bit different in terms of that. Yeah, it just left me wanting
a violent sound of thunder.
Essentially. Yeah, from a band that used to be on the cutting edge of like this. Nobody had heard anything harder than this. Like everything was so percussive, everything was so insane. I just feel like they're getting dull.
And one of the things that like I think really drags Meshuggah down over the last few albums too is that when you go back to like their stuff from the mid 90s up until say the Catch 33 and even a bit of Obzen, they would have these very melodic interludes and very jazz fusion inspired passages of music. And then with Obzen, they basically just stopped doing that. And now it's heavy album the whole way through, no clean guitars, no melodic moments. It's just, we're going to beat you over the head with neo-chromaticism. And I mean, even the time signature things, like the polymeters have like completely straightened out. And it's like, everything is now just blatantly in 4/4.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it doesn't feel like Meshuggah to me anymore. It's more like listening to like a lesser album from a band like Gojira or something. Like they've kind of turned into their turned into their contemporaries instead of. I like Gojira, but let's face it, they do have a few moments where it's like, especially like their early days where they hadn't evolved into what they are now.
I will say this, at least with Gojira, they have evolved past their influences of Meshuggah, where like I enjoyed Fortress 10 times more than I did this past Meshuggah album.
You mean Fortitude?
Fortitude, not Fortress.
Right,
sorry.
Right.
I'm gonna get again kicked in the ass because of that. Absolutely. Yeah. And Nathan, Brent, have you heard the new Meshuggah album? It's very heavy metal.
Yeah, I don't tend to go for the extreme metal.
Yeah, I'm not. That wouldn't be my first go-to, no.
It's okay. You don't have to listen to it because it's not very good. Oh boy. So luckily, Brent, you already talked about my main disappointment of the year. So I'll go to the second disappointment that I had. And I want to give a big preface to this. And this is part of the reason why I don't like disappointments or worse, because I know a lot of people did really enjoy this album, but I don't get it. This was one that really was sold to me as being amazing and people kept talking about it. And I just never really heard it. I didn't see where the praises were coming from, because for me, it just sounded very retro prog. It felt very like the symphonic progs that we've been hearing so much lately, and it is the Jonas Lindberg Miles from Nowhere. That album, I I don't know, I just didn't connect with it as much as everybody else. It was a little bit of a disappointment based on how much hype it got. And I see that it's behind Nathan, so I'm sorry. I just
No, it's cool.
I didn't get it. And you know, I have some pretty good friends in a little bit of a higher place, and they're like, why didn't you like it? Like, what was it? What wasn't connecting? And I'm like, I don't know. There was just something about it. It was just I hate to use these terms, but it just felt very safe, very rudimentary, very to be expected. Like if you had given all of like Spock's Beard, Flower Kings, like all the big modern retro progressive rock bands into an algorithm and just had like a computer spit out the next notes, I feel like that would have been Jonas's record. I see the talent that Jonas has and I can see the orchestration, but the album overall just didn't wow me as much. So that's mine. I was kind of hoping to talk a little bit more about Ghost, but I feel like we've kicked Ghost to the can a little bit more. Does anybody else have any other disappointments that they wanted to talk about?
Well, you had mentioned the Animals as Leaders album earlier.
Yes, I did.
And I kind of have the same view of that album as I do about the Meshuggah, although I'm a little bit kinder to the Animals as Leaders one because it's a little bit more in my sort of musical wheelhouse on a more consistent basis than Meshuggah is. But I do remember giving the album a listen and just completely zoning out through it. It didn't hold my attention. It didn't sound like Tosin Abasi was really doing anything I hadn't already heard from him 1,000 times. And again, it's one of those cases of this is a guitar player who's on the cutting edge of guitar playing. I mean, he's literally inventing techniques that have never been done on a guitar before. And now we're like, I think this is their fourth or fifth album in. It's their fifth album. And, you know, the period of invention is over for Animals as Leaders. Now it's just, all right, we've already shown you our tricks. We're just going to make songs with them now. And they're good songs. They're good pieces of music, but they're not as exciting to me as it was when I would put on a new Animals as Leaders release and go, all right, how is Tosin Abasi going to make me want to quit guitar today?
I mean, that is fair. In terms of techniques and in terms of like cutting edge, there's not quite as much on here as past albums, but I feel like this is probably their most mature album in developing those techniques and really playing with them. Kind of like, okay, we've unearthed and we've discovered these new techniques. Now let's play with them a little bit more. Let's really shine them out. And I can see how in terms of discovering new techniques that would leave people cold, but in terms of the musicianship, I still kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was much better than The Madness of Many, their last release back in 2017, 2016, something around there.
You know what? I'll have to listen to the two to compare them again because I haven't returned to Parisia yet. So yeah, maybe I'll give it another shot. We'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah. Any others? We can go over to Brent if there was any other disappointments that you had throughout.
Don't have any other.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And Nathan, over to you.
No, nothing really here for that either.
That's what I love to hear. You know, we're I much prefer talking about things that I like versus things that I don't like, but it's still good to kind of check to see if there was anything that didn't really tickle us as much. So let's go on to surprises. These were albums that weren't necessarily our favorites, but there was something really exciting about those. And I'm going to, again, use my system to see who's going to talk about it first. It looks like it's me. It's number one. All right.
This is rigged. Rigged, I tell you.
Hey, you got number one. All right, you got the first one out. We'll finish this with having Brent doing the looking forward to, so that everybody gets a chance to go first. So there were three that I really enjoyed. Only Passing Through was one that I really surprised me from Patters Seeking Animals. But The one came out of nowhere, and these are always my favorite bands, the ones that are either recommended to me by fans or whatnot, or just come out of nowhere. And it's a new release from Bloodywood. Bloodywood is a metal band from India that started off as being a kind of like a metal parody of Bollywood tracks. So like very Indian inspired tracks. And I'm surprised nobody has done this before, because like my fiance and I love Bollywood. Like we'll watch one Bollywood movie a month or so. I love it for the music because it's so rhythmic. It's so like deep bass oriented with their music. And I was surprised nobody picked up the like that style of music and just put it to metal music, because it's so apt for that. And Bloodywood did that. And their album, I'm just gonna double check, brilliant. Really enjoyed my time with that. Again, came out of nowhere. It's very heavy, very fun. And they finally put out their first record, which is Rakshak, Rakshak. Rakshak. If you haven't heard it already and you're into a little bit more of an extreme type of metal, give it a go. It reminds me a little bit more of like the new metal movement with like because they do cite oh shoot, the names escape me. What was the big metal new metal band?
Korn.
Korn for sure. But there was one true. There's, why can't I think of it? It's, I can see it. They Numb was their big hit.
Linkin Park.
Thank you, Linkin Park. They credit Linkin Park as being a really big influence of theirs, and I'm not a big fan of Linkin Park, but I am a fan of Bloodywood. So that one absolutely just surprised me. Travis, what was one that surprised you?
The one that surprised me the most was probably the new side project from former Rush guitarist Alex Lifeson.
It's good.
And Envy of None.
It's real good, guys.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, I knew from the singles that this wasn't going to be your father's Rush album. There was not going to be any Tom Sawyer 2112 antics on this, but it's really neat, like industrial rock kind of. A good friend of mine described it as like if Billie Eilish and Steven Wilson did a collab.
Yeah.
And it happened to feature Alex Lifeson. There's not a lot. You wouldn't even really notice Alex Lifeson was there if it hadn't been written in the liner notes. There's like maybe only like a couple of guitar solos and a couple real standout guitar moments. But other than that, like, it's just a really cool atmospheric sort of, like I said, like industrial rock, ambient kind of album.
Mm-hmm.
Just really interesting. And it's like the last thing I would have expected Alex Lifeson to do.
Yeah, I after your recommendation, I went out and listened to it, and I'm working on my review for it right now. I totally like endorse this album, and yeah, it is a very mashing of the current contemporary pop movement with like Billie Eilish, Dua Lipa, even to a little bit of an extent of some of the more Americana, like in terms of the singing styles of, say, like Lana Del Rey or even Carly Rae Jepsen. Very whimsical, very soft spoken in terms of the lyrics.
Yeah, like she has that very breathy kind of like whispery like quality to her singing.
Yeah, but then you pair it with very contemporary and state-of-the-art prog like Anathema or Atma. Like that was the flavor I was getting within the prog sphere. Like I was very clearly hearing like Weather Systems or I almost said early distant warnings. That's Rush. Distant Satellites. And we're here because we're here.
Well, actually, you mentioned Distant Early Warning from Rush, and what I was thinking is like if this did have like a sort of connection to Alex Lifeson's past, it really feels like sort of a modern interpretation of that 80s synth era.
Absolutely. Yeah, because like I was listening to this and I'm like, am I sure I'm on the right band? Because like I don't hear Alex on here at all. And like he's kind of the main, I don't want to say the main foot on the bill for this, but like he's the reason why I'm coming to it. I don't hear his presence on here at all until I started thinking about, the triple punch of the 80s albums, Grace Under Pressure, Signals, and Power Windows. Like I was hearing those three albums on this album. So yeah, it's a really interesting interpretation of music right now. I loved it. Brent, was there one that really stood out for you in terms of a surprise?
Yeah, the Flower Kings recent one.
Yeah,
we did a great review back there, Notes and I, and
sure did.
yeah, and Nathan, I'm agreeing, you probably feel this way too, that it was really touched back to their older stuff, and really made me appreciate it, because the last two releases were a little bit subpar. Islands was okay, but Waiting for Miracles was kind of on the weaker side to me, and it just, I don't know, it felt good to have them back where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I remember when we did our review and I mentioned about the third week of that album with me with it, something just clicked. And I'm like, this is really special music. And so I'm glad to hear that it happened to you, because I remember you were being a little lukewarm on the album at the time. So would you say
it's
that,
one of those ones, like any great, not just the Flower Kings, but any album that grabs your attention and demands you sit and listen repeatedly, is going to be a good album.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think with these albums, like, because they're so long and there's so much packed into it, it takes a while to digest it all, and you have to listen to it several times to really get it all. So it kind of washed over me on first listen, like, wow, that was a lot to take in. I'm not sure what I just listened to, but I had to listen to it several more times to get into it. But once I did, it's great.
I'm still not even done my first listen of the album.
Give it time. Great. Nathan, what was one that surprised you?
I think you already mentioned it, but the one that stood out to me is Black Country New Road, the Ants from Up Here album, because it's a band I just didn't really know much about. I think I checked out their first album last year and just didn't really think it was for me. It just was kind of a style I don't usually listen to, but I heard so much good things about this one, I thought I'd check it out, and really enjoyed it. I think it's really unique and it has kind of a mixture of that kind of indie rock scene, but also some proggy flourishes as well, maybe a little bit of like King Crimson-esque kind of vibe in certain sections, and they do a lot of different instruments. There's a lot of variation in the music, and they have some extended pieces towards the end that are like almost epic length, and just really cool vibe to it. Feels very modern and very fresh, and I just really thought it was a cool new release that I usually wouldn't have gravitated towards, but I heard so much good attention towards it, I thought I'd check it out, and I'm glad I did. It was really cool.
Yeah, it still surprises me. Like I'll put it on even like a month after the last listen and still get surprised of like, oh, I didn't hear that the first time or the second time or the 10th time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of those that just has so much into it that you can always pull out different pieces to it, different instruments that stand out this time versus last time. It's just really cool. There's a lot to pick out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So just really quickly, I'm going to talk about a few other surprises that I had. The new Anna von Hauswolf live album, live at Montreux Live Jazz Festival, really recontextualizes a lot of her past works in this live setting that came out before the pandemic happened. A couple albums that actually, Nathan, you got me into, Lalu really surprised me.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Canadian band Saga. And if you haven't heard Saga and you like Lalu, check out their self-titled work. The track The Perfectionist is just so good. I love the story behind that. I've been listening a lot to stoner metal this past little bit. And even though it was from last year, the Dark Majesty album from Kal-El, I've been really digging into. It reminds me of what would happen if Black Sabbath, for their first 4 albums, hired David Gilmour to come in and play guitars. It's just, I've been loving that album and I've been listening to it quite a bit. And I think those were the only other like albums that really, really surprised me. I have been listening to a lot of like instrumental led ambient music. So like the Portico Quartet put out 2 albums last year, Teria and Monument, that I've been gushing over. Like I've been listening to these guys as I've been falling asleep. And it's so beautiful. Very soundtracky, very ambient, very soundscapey. And yeah, once I'm able to buy records again, because I gave it up for Lent, those are going to be the first 2 albums I pick up. So let's go backwards and start with Nathan. Was there any other albums that surprised you very quickly?
A couple I listened to. I think the band's called Wilderun. The album's called Epigony, I think, or Epigon or something. It's a surprise to me because it's more of a heavier, I don't really like the tech metal kind of heavy music usually with like more aggressive or growling vocals, which this has a bit of, kind of like Opeth style. But I really like this one because there's a lot of like more folky kind of lighter moments. His clean vocals are really excellent. So I just thought this was a really cool little album that I found. Another one, it's not super proggy, but I really like the latest Tears for Fears album, The Tipping Point. I thought was really, really cool. Just really a great return for those guys. And it's made me kind of delve backwards into some of their earlier albums because I hadn't really listened to much of their like 90s material and stuff like that. So this has been really fun and really cool little pop album. I thought was really good.
Yeah, I was chatting with somebody about the new Tears for Fears album, and I mentioned that this is essentially what Steven Wilson was aiming for with To the Bone and The Future Bites. Like this is what he was trying to capture with those 2 records. So,
yeah, that's a good description. Yeah.
What was that first album? Because I want to look it up.
Yeah, it's Wilderun, I think. Wilderun is the name of the band.
Wilderun. I'm looking that up.
Yeah. I believe they got a lot of praise for their album previous to their more recent one too. I think that one's really highly recommended.
They're a band that's definitely on my to-do list.
Wilderun. Shoot. Trying to find it. Anyway, while we're looking for that, Brent, did you have any other ones that you
did. I won't talk too much about it, but Troika.
Yeah.
Anything these 3 gentlemen do is pure gold, in my opinion. And I hope we get a Troika 2 album, or whatever we want to call it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think we will. I think it's been fairly well received.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It reminded me of like the heyday of like Crosby, Stills and Nash. I'm
Definitely.
so glad that we're getting a little bit more harmonizations, because I know that was something that Mike Portnoy wanted to do with a lot of his side projects where like all the members were singing. So I'm glad to see like his vision, unfortunately without him, is being realized. Yeah.
Well, it just gives a whole different spotlight on Ross Jennings, especially.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially with his last year's solo project. It's definitely giving him a little bit of a new playground to play in.
Yeah, and he's got a terrific voice for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Travis, any other surprises that came your way?
Not really. I think probably the closest thing I'd say to another surprise was Joe Satriani's The Elephants of Mars. Yeah, that just came out like Friday, and I've only had one listen to it so far. I wasn't really too hot on his last album, What Happens Next. With Joe Satriani, I mean, he's such a master shredder. And I get that sometimes you want to slow down a little and play some bluesy licks, but I want to hear Joe rip. And he does that a little bit more on The Elephants of Mars, although the context is a little different now. It's a little bit more like ambient. It's a little more like drum loop synth kind of stuff. It's almost a bit like his very first release. Not of This Earth, where, you know, a lot of programmed drums, a lot of very not as like heavy rock kind of style, but you still hear Joe Satriani, and it's just so good to hear Satch play on Satch's level again, because I wasn't as impressed with this last album as I should have been. So I was just surprised that The Elephants of Mars was so good.
Mm-hmm. That actually sparked my reminder, because I haven't listened to it, but has anybody heard the new Steve Vai album that came out this year?
Yes.
Okay. Anything to report on that one? Because I missed that one.
It's really good. His last few releases have all been very like heavily conceptual, a lot of very like highbrow kind of writing, and it feels nice to just hear Steve Vai do something a little bit more like, there's no such thing in Steve Vai's world as stripped back, but it's like each song is kind of just its own little thing now, and it feels a little more normal in whatever vein Steve Vai could ever do normal. I mean, you have one song that's played entirely with one hand and like the other one tied behind his back, and then another one on a 3-neck instrument where he's playing all 3 necks at pretty much the same time.
I've seen that picture.
Yeah.
So your interpretation of normal with Steve Vai is going to be your results may vary, but yeah, I thought it was just a good, solid little record. You know, it wasn't trying to be something bigger than it was. It's just a good, solid shred album.
Amazing. All right, this brings us to our last segment, which is those albums that we're looking forward to in the next quarter. Anything being released March, April, May kind of area. If we even want to push it forward, if you know of any. I know the big Porcupine Tree album isn't due until I think June or July. So something a little closer, but I mean, everybody is excited for that one. So let's finish this off with Brent. You were the only one that didn't get to go first. Which ones are you excited for?
Well, of course, Porcupine Tree.
Yeah.
And I believe Steven Wilson is even going to have a solo album out this year too.
Oh, I haven't heard.
I'd like to know what's going to happen with the Weather Systems. The Anathema
kind of, yeah. That'd be really exciting.
Pure Reason Revolution's new album.
Yeah, Above Cirrus, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that I am keeping my eyes out for, because I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. And Anubis just went on Bandcamp, and they're releasing a remix version of their first album, 230503 it's called. So I'm a big fan of theirs, so I want to hear what that sounds like.
Yeah, you were actually the one that got me into that band, and I've loved all of their outputs. They're the ones that did Homeless, right? Their last album was Homeless.
Yeah.
Wasn't a big fan of that one, but all the other ones just so good. Neo-prog, just like top of the tier. They were blowing me away.
Yeah,
I'm like, these
check
guys
them out if you haven't heard of them.
These guys are giving IQ and Marillion a run for their money. So yeah, absolutely. Travis, any ones that you're looking forward to?
Yeah. So we've got a new album by Monuments, sort of a gent band in the same vein as like Periphery, Tesseract. Actually shared some members with those bands before. They've got the new one. Sorry, I'm going to be reading off a list here. They got a new one. Where is it? In Stasis, coming out on the 15th. So I'm looking forward to that quite a bit. Another one that I'm looking forward to is Beautiful Shade of Grey by James Labrie, his new solo album that's coming out. And the first single, Devil and Drag, has already been out. And it's kind of neat because it's a little more like, I wouldn't say folky acoustic, but it's like an acoustic rock kind of single. It's the kind of thing you wouldn't necessarily think was out of place on like terrestrial broadcast rock radio, but I think it's a good song. Like, you know, he's working with Marcos Fogli again for guitars, but I think he has a new writing partner now. He's not using I always forget the name of the keyboardist he works with, but they're not working together on this record. I think he still has Marco Miniman on drums though, which is
That's
Oh,
fine.
nice.
you got to
fine.
have him.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm also looking forward to, of course, the new Porcupine Tree, like everyone else is. I think we can all just agree the new Porcupine Tree is on this list.
Yeah.
But Pain of Salvation has been working on a new album that is tentatively titled The Deep End. And there's no release date on that. It's probably coming out like in the fall, but I'm probably one of the bigger Pain of Salvation fans on this planet, and anything they do, I'm gonna look forward to it. So
yeah, I do have a special place in my heart for Pain of Salvation because I know that's where we met. Was at their Any Given Sunday tour. I believe that was one of the places where Travis and I met.
that was definitely the place.
Yeah. And speaking of James Woodbury, I'm definitely looking forward to that because Elements of Persuasion is still one of my favorite records from him. I didn't realize he was putting something out, so I'll keep my eyes on that.
The release date on that is May 20th.
Coming up soon. Nathan, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, they mentioned some of the ones I am looking forward to as well. The Pure Reason Revolution also, and James LeBrie's record. I love the single. I think that it really shows a lot of promise. That's going to be really good. I'm excited for the new Kaipa that's coming out.
Yes, thank you.
Urskog, I think it's called. It's coming out, later this month, I believe. The Tangent just announced they're coming out with the new album, Songs from the Hard Shoulder, in June 10th.
Okay.
I'm also hopeful that the Deer Hunter should be coming out with a new album this year. Anti-May, I think is what it's gonna be called.
Yeah.
They haven't really set a date for that, but I think it should be coming like by the summer, I hope.
Yeah,
They're doing a lot of touring coming up, so
yeah, and all of their EPs that they've been putting out has just been making me more and more salivate for long form, like the Indigo Child and All Is As All Should Be. I'm just like, give me an actual, like, let's finish. I don't know if they're going to finish the Axe series or if they're going to just do another one-off like they did with the name, it's the Birdcage one.
Migrant. I think
Migrant. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to finish because I think they want to do a film for the final act. But anyway,
I think they're moving on to some other series of albums that's separate from.
I'm okay with that. If I get another full length Deer Hunter album. I'm also really excited for. I pronounce them Kappa, but I
could be wrong.
I'm probably wrong. I wasn't a big fan of their last album of Children of the Sound, but they've still put out some of my absolute favorite prog projects, like In the Wake of Evolution, I think is their masterpiece, and Keyholder and Notes from the Past, all brilliant albums. So I'm always looking forward to new Kappa. And unfortunately, going last means that like you guys have basically covered all the albums I'm looking forward to. The only one that wasn't mentioned is the new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard record. They've already put out 2, and I'm just going to look that up. They put out 2 singles, and this is one of the rare times when I actually broke down and listened to them because there's Magenta Mountain. I can read. Gotta love dyslexia. Magenta Mountain reminds me of some of the more subtle moments from John Anderson's The Shadows of Sun Hollow, or the Oasis of Sun Hollow, his first record.
Elias of Sun Hollow.
Thank you.
Elias
of, I always just, it's Sun Hollow. Some of the synth sounds that they're using on that. And the Dripping Tap is the other big release, and it's like 18 minutes long. So I feel like the promise, and to use Nathan's so apt descriptor. The promises from Butterfly 3000 are being realized on whatever this record's going to be. So I am so excited for this next record from King Gizzard. And yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. Pure Reason Revolution, I'm really excited for. Kappa, I'm really excited for. I have now a bunch more that I'm going to dive into and listen to, which I'm really excited for. And that's it, I think. I want to thank all three of you for coming on and spending just over an hour chatting about the music from this year so far. Yeah, let's do another round table of who you are and where you can find. We'll start with Nathan. We'll kind of go backwards this time. Nathan, where can people find you?
Yeah, people can find me on YouTube. Nathan on Shuffle is the name of my channel. I'm also, on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff too. I'm just at Nathan on Shuffle as well on those. And yeah, just would love it if people would come and just enjoy prog music on my channel. It's a lot of fun over there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brent, where can people find you?
You can find me at Similitude of Prog on Facebook and YouTube as well, and Twitter and all that. Make sure you check out everybody else's. All these three gentlemen here, we all do some fine work and enjoy everybody's work. And let's keep it up and do this in the near future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And check out his radio programming as well on Fridays. Loving it. And Travis, where can people find you?
On ultimateguitar.com, under the reviews section, I'm the one who writes all of their official album reviews. I also have a YouTube channel, which is just under my name, Travis Lausch. So there you go.
Beautiful. And you can find me here. That's all I got. Thank you once again, gentlemen, for coming on, spending some time chatting about prog. Hopefully we'll have you back in about 3 months or so to chat about some of these albums that we've been looking forward to and seeing how the rest of 2022 shapes up.
Yes.
So
Good.
on behalf of Nathan, Brent, and Travis, this is all 4 of us out until next time.
See you guys.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Yep.